out of the ordinary insights. Brought to you by Investec Specialist Bank.
Well, joining us again for our conversation with Johan van Zyl, who's Chief Executive of Sanlam. We've been talking about Sanlam, the company, the sector, and some of the sectoral issues, life insurance, investment, and so on, and business in South Africa. Now we move more to the personal side of Johan van Zyl. Sanlam, Chief Executive, financial services company, one of the giants, yet you have a degree in agriculture. Not the normal route, I would say. Usually it's actuaries or economists who get to the top. So let's go right back and find out why you went into agricultural study.
Yes, I grew up on a farm and only wanted to do one thing, is farming. I didn't want to go to university. Eventually I had to make, my mum said, that's fine, but one condition, you have to get a degree. And once I got to university, I loved it so much. In fact, I never left. As you know, I went on and on at the University of
before
Pretoria.
we get to through your long career at university, tell me a bit about the farm. Where was it, and what kind of farm was it?
It was a citrus farm in the Hoedspruit area, which today is all mining, Burgersfort, those areas, you know, Burgersfort, big mining area, Werkstad, and so that's where we had an export citrus farm.
Big family?
No, one sister, and that's it now.
And had it always been in the family?
It's been in the family for a while, but later on it got expropriated, became part of Leboa, and then we moved on.
Would you ever want to go back and farm?
Yeah, I still have 2 pieces of land. I have a farm, a game farm, and a sheep farming operation. It's great fun.
It sounds like something you'd like to go to rather than stay there.
Yes, it's nice to have other people do the hard yards and the hard work, and you can give and get a few ideas and so forth, but other people do the work. That's great.
So you want to sit on the stoep and watch the sun go down? That's fine.
Nothing like that.
What about the university? Was it at Pretoria that you started?
I started there and enjoyed it. Initially, I wasn't a great academic as an undergraduate. I enjoyed playing rugby. Thought you could make a life, and thereafter I had to go into the army, and saw what rather than I wanted to become what I didn't want to become, and that's what really ignited the thing and got me to study a bit harder, and eventually got a PhD in agricultural economics and later on economics as well.
Now, what did that lead you to in practical terms? Some interesting projects, interesting places to go to?
Interesting projects. Firstly, starting on the farming side of things, then branching into the whole thing of the marketing. In those days, we had the marketing boards, or some people called the control boards, was part of a commission that, you know, sort of started the demise of those things, then moved on into rural development, and then ended up at the World Bank for a number of years as coordinator of rural development.
So that must have been an interesting time, because it was a time when agriculture in South Africa was changing dramatically. What kind of picture did you see then, and how has it developed? Has it developed as it should have?
I think we've been lagging. I mean, the commercial part of agriculture certainly developed as it should have. You know, today we're producing as much maize on half the acreage and the area that we produced in earlier, right? So it is really technology, the embracing of that and so forth. So we've been doing well. The part that is really, I think, where we've dropped the ball is the small farmers, particularly the black farmers, and on the support side of things.
Well, let's look at that and the land reform process. And there are these 2 kinds of imperatives, aren't there? On the one hand, there's the commercial imperative, fewer people all the time, mechanization. One reads of the United States where you have farmers run by a man and his wife with satellites controlling where the plow puts the seed into the ground. And yet here in South Africa, we don't want to lose jobs. We do want intensive labor. How do we marry these 2 imperatives?
I think, you know, the original plans that we've had were pretty good and solid. I mean, the idea was for agriculture to be a big employer of people, but, you know, but then you need the resources. You need the credit, you need agriculture. The land itself is essentially worthless. It locks you into often, you know, without the support services that goes with it. And that go with it. And we haven't had that. That's where we've fallen down. And in fact, what we've had from the farmer support programs, the small farmer support programs that we've seen of the early or late 80s, early 90s. Those things have disappeared. And instead of being doubled and tripled, and I think that is one of the major problems.
Isn't there also an emperor in the room with no clothes that no one is talking about? Is that the demand for redistribution of land, black people who want to farm, are not that many, and the redistribution has not generally been a success. Farms have now fallen into disuse.
That's one of the reasons, but again, I think it's mainly due to the support. If you can make a decent living, people will embrace that rather than being unemployed. But if you're going to just struggle, not getting the harvests in, not getting seeds at the right time and credit and so forth, you're simply not going to do it. Part of the demand to become farmers, I think, is the lack of viable opportunity.
Do you think we're going to have food security? When you look at where we are now, are you?
Yeah, I'm comfortable that we can produce what is necessary, and farming is unlike what people say, that it's actually price insensitive and so forth. People do respond fairly quickly. If prices are proper, our farmers are good entrepreneurs. They'll find a way of producing.
Let's look at your academic career, because you didn't just become an economist, agricultural economist, and get a doctorate. You went into the administrative side and ended up as Vice Chancellor. And was there a point at which you said, I now have an ambition for that?
I've always had this dual role. Even as a Vice Chancellor, I did a lot of research, and I think 1 or 2 years I did publish also a lot within the university structure. So I've never dropped being the academic part, being an academic. So I always tried to marry the two, being an administrator and so forth. And again, it's often, you find there are certain things being done to you, and you either complain about it, and accept it, or leave, or do something about it. So I tried to do something.
You became the person doing.
Yeah, and in the administration. And I think that is also part of in South Africa. We can complain a lot and not do anything, or we can try and make a difference as well.
Well, a lot of people would do that, but you became the rector or the Vice Chancellor. It's the top job. And in a very tough period in the 1990s, where a lot of contested ground in the university space.
Yes. And of course, at Pretoria, we had the additional thing. We had to open up, so we had to bring in English as a language. We had to bring in black people.
So it was tough marrying all the different constituencies.
Yes, and in a way, everybody was unhappy. And, because you don't, it's not as easy as Sanlam, where there's a bottom line and everybody has an expectation of what it should be, and everybody can be measured against it. You may think you do a good job, but one group may be against it, and another group may have a different perspective, and so forth. But I think that worked well. And it helped that I was very young and didn't think too much about the future.
How old were you when you became rector?
I think 39 or something.
Yeah. So you were young enough to make mistakes.
And I did make some.
But what were some of the mistakes? What did you learn? I mean, and I think a university more than anywhere, there are a lot of, when I worked at Wits, I remember the Vice Chancellor saying to me, you'll find a lot of very difficult people here, but very few stupid ones. And you've got to get them all working together.
But yes. So it's a bit like herding cats. I think in the end you have to, what helped me was I never abandoned the research part myself, and that meant always had good academic support, because we did what we thought was right for the academic part of the institution, and that helped, that really helped. But the big lessons were around certainly management of a very complex organization, one without a proper goal, and how you build consensus.
How did you do that?
Well, being an Afrikaner and being Afrikaans really helped a lot. People assumed, or maybe wrongly sometimes, that you would look at the common good, and therefore trying to find a space. But you have to be in front. You can't think that. You have to expose yourself. You have to communicate a lot. You have to build alliances and so forth.
Your successor, Carly Pistorius, I think, was your successor. I think he was an engineer. And when I interviewed him, he said, the funny thing is that the people who complain the most about things, it's about the things that they don't have to worry about.
That's correct.
And in a way, I suppose, it's just showing people that they have nothing to fear.
No, people have, often they see things coming, but I think the South Africans, by and large, have been extremely pragmatic to embrace change. I mean, similarly at Sanlam, we were focused on an Afrikaans-speaking market, and we were very successful. But the future certainly didn't lie there, because The part that we didn't have was small, it wasn't really growing, and we had to branch out and embrace a much bigger market, both in South Africa and not only insurance and outside of South Africa. So that challenge, but people still hold back. But once they see it and they see the determination and they believe in it, they support it.
What about the concept of an Afrikaans university? There was talk that Potchefstroom might be it, that Pretoria might be it. Stellenbosch, there's still battles going on, you see in the Afrikaans press about, shouldn't we have one university where the medium of instruction and research is Afrikaans? Is that a battle still being fought? Can it be won?
Yeah, I think there is a place for Afrikaans at universities, but to have an institution that will be taught only in Afrikaans, I don't think is what a university is about. A university is about a much wider concept. It is not about limiting things. It's about bringing new ideas, debating them, and so forth. And the moment you, from the outset, limit yourselves to a particular grouping or idea or whatever it may be, it means cutting out a whole lot of the rest. And I think you're the poorer for it, and it will eventually show in the standards and the kind of people that you may draw and so. In the short term, it may be great for the next 10, 15 years. But universities have long lives. I mean, if you look at the 50 oldest institutions in the world, they're mainly churches and universities. And they've been around for a long time. So, to plan for the next 10 years, I don't think is really what one should do. You should plan for the next 100 and 200 years.
So you were rector at Pretoria University, and then you went to become a chief executive. What was the appeal of that?
Well,
especially being an agricultural economist and academic administrator to go into insurance.
Yes, I was on Sanlam's board and on ABSA's board and so forth while being rector of the University of Pretoria. Maybe spoke too much, and when my term ended, I got offered a job there at Sanlam to say, well, you've been saying a few things at the board, why don't you want to implement some of them? And so that was the opportunity.
What did you take with you from the university and agriculture that was very useful?
I think risk management. I've worked in agriculture. All my studies in agriculture has been on risk management. In addition, and originally being at Santam, we run a big crop insurance, and insurance is at the core of risk management, diversification, those concepts, and they work well.
So what next? You say you've got 2.5 years to go at Sanlam. Still got another career ahead of you if you want it.
Yes, in fact, you can't retire when you're 60.
Must never retire.
No, I agree with that. And apart from the funding that you may, your funding may run out before you run out.
As you're very aware of, as in
I'm
the
very
insurance
aware of, as I see that happens with many people, so don't require to retire too early. But the next 2.5 years, I have a lot. We have massive plans. We're growing the business. Funnily, we still have some capital that has to be applied somewhere else. The two big things that's created value in Sanlam is the two things that we sat with 10 years. It's both the growth story, to really embrace that. We have great partners in places like India, Malaysia, throughout Africa. And in South Africa, the business is doing well. The insurance companies are making a sort of a comeback. They've been growing tremendously over the past 2 years. And so that's great. And then who knows what the future will bring.